Well, should public transit be free? And would you take the bus or the metro more often if it was? Now, turns out some cities have tried it. And how did it work out there? To answer that question, let's go to the Netherlands, where we find Oded Katz, a professor at the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. Professor Katz, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Elias. Good afternoon from the Netherlands.
Yes, absolutely. And let's talk about what you've studied, what you've researched before in the past. You've taken a look at least one city where they tried this out. Why don't you tell our listeners, is free public transit really an option?
Sure. So we looked into the case of Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, which is, at the time when we looked at it, it's a decade ago, was the largest city to implement free public transport. And that's the first point which is important to make. It's never really free. Question is free for whom? So it does cost money. The question is who is one to pay? And then there are always two main sources of income for public transport. One is, taxpayers' money. Mm-hmm. We're all subsidizing public transport to different extent in different cities. And the other source of money comes from ticket revenues, right? And the split between these two varies quite a bit. In most cities in North America, it's about 70-80% coming from subsidies and the rest coming from ticket sales. In Europe, that's a bit different. It's about 50-50 in most cities. Uh-huh. In the case of Tallinn, before they made it free, only 1/3 of their incomes came from ticket sales, 2/3 came from subsidies. So that was already very high for European standards.
Gotcha.
And of course, by now it's 100% subsidies, no income from ticket sales. So it was a very different point to start with. And we were surprised to see fairly limited impact of this policy once introduced.
When you say when they introduce it, they make it quote unquote free. And as you point out, it's never free, but you don't have to pay to get on. A limited impact. What happened in Tallinn?
So what happened is that we saw a slight increase in demand for public transport, number of travel being made, about 10% increase. Most of it came actually from people switching from walking and cycling. So short distance trips, which otherwise you would rather walk or cycle, now being performed by public transport simply because it's free. Arguably, that's not the desirable impact. So the main objective that the city of Tallinn had at the time is to lead to a shift from car use to public transport, and that hasn't been realized.
So it's interesting because in the discussion we have a lot in North America, and certainly we have it here in Montreal, I hear people say if you made it free, everyone would take it. Ridership would vastly improve. And I guess what you're saying, it's not a given that would happen.
No, and we know from many other cases worldwide as well, also from changes in the cost of using public transport or from making it completely free, that the impact is fairly limited because it's seldom the reason that you don't choose for public transport because it's expensive. It's simply because it doesn't offer a good alternative, right?
Gotcha.
And most important are speed, frequency, and reliability in this order. And it's simply a very expensive measure. You take away about, say, 1/3 in the case of Tallinn of your income, and the impact that you see is very limited. And if you were to invest the same amount of money in improving the service, we know that the impact would have been much greater.
We're with Oded Katz, a professor at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. We're talking about the question of whether or not public transit should be free and what's the impact when a city makes public transit free. Professor Katz, I guess I want to ask if it matters about the size of the city, right? This example in Estonia, about 500,000 people. We've, on this show over the last many years, I've had various conversations about it. And I've noticed it seems like it matters if it's a town of 50,000 or if it's a town of 1 million people. What can you tell us on that end? Does the size of the city matter?
It sure does. That's a good point. So I would say there are very few cases where making public transport completely free makes sense. And those few cases tend to be small-sized cities with a lot of visitors. Think of ski resorts, places that see a peak of travel demand during tourism seasons, these kind of places. There it could make sense, simply because, the cost of controlling in the system, having conductors checking tickets, and also, anyhow, the cost of running the system are fairly small to start with. So even if you lose a percentage, it's not a lot in absolute terms. in large cities, that can be, I think, devastating in terms of the cost that you lose, which are otherwise, you also fully depend on subsidies, which mean that if there are budget cuts, right, which happen time to time, and then you cut the cost for public transport, it directly affects what is available as a budget to the agency, as opposed to ticket revenues, which are more earmarked as a source of income. So that also makes it more robust in terms of your finances. And the last point to be made there is that an argument which is made oftentimes for this policy, other than the model shift, supposedly, is a more social one. So to also allow people with fewer opportunities to access, right, different amenities and so forth. The best way to address this is to give this population of interest, the elderly, the students, lower income, unemployed, whatever might be the case, direct discounts or even full concessions.
So targeted. We should target, like, for instance, City of Montreal recently targeted seniors and made it free for seniors. Targeting, you think, has some advantages?
Precisely, because when you make it free for those which you really want to provide additional opportunities to what otherwise might be available to them, so you address the affordability questions, right? Without transferring all the costs from users to the entire population.
What should, instead of making it free, because there's a cost to that, right? Let's say you were subsidizing 2/3, now you're going to substitute 100%. Is there a better use of the money for a public transit system? Instead of going to full subsidies, free fares, should they use that money in a different way to get more people on the bus or on the metro?
Absolutely, that's right. So that's investing in improving speed and improving frequencies. Having more frequent services, but you can rely on public transport. And thirdly, reliability in terms of punctuality. Those are the three most important things you can do to improve ultimately demand for your system. The second most effective thing is to increase the cost of using the car, the alternative.
The stick for others, right? Not necessarily a carrot, but a stick for others.
So we know from really a lot of body of empirical research, most effective level of service of public transport, second most effective, the cost of using the alternative, and only bottom of the list comes the cost of using public transport itself.
Let me end with you on just how much public transport, if making it free isn't necessarily a solution or it doesn't work, how much should it cost? Like, do you look at some systems around the world and say, my God, they're not paying enough, like you're devaluing the product? What is a fair amount to pay for public transit?
That's a great question. Ultimately, it's a political one, because what is fair, that is a trade-off between how much should the user pay as opposed to how much all taxpayers contribute in paying. And you can also contrast it with the case for road, where we also as taxpayers contribute, but we also put some of the cost on users, right? We don't subsidize fuel. We tax it quite heavily, in fact, right? So that's also a question that has to do with the competition and how much what is the price of the competition. So I cannot offer a universal answer to that, I'm afraid.
Well, that's it. And every city is different on top of it all. Professor Katz, great discussion. Thank you so much for coming on our show today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That is Oded Katz, a professor at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands.
Close your eyes and you can hear the entire world come alive. 2026 FIFA World Cup is on, and you can stream it all live on TSN Radio. From the opening kickoff to the final celebration, every match, every moment. Listen to FIFA World Cup on TSN Radio.
Gives Canada the lift off.
Available on iHeartRadio.